Hello. My name is Ilaria Quinn, and 3 hours before my husband dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness, I was standing in his office building being told that his wife had already left. Not me. Her. The woman he replaced me with so cleanly, they erased my name from the directory. And this is where it all begins. I balanced the coffee tray on one palm, my fingers curled tightly around the brown paper bag. The familiar scent of cinnamon and almond butter drifted upward, his favorite. My stomach fluttered with a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation as the sliding glass doors whooshed open in front of me. The building was just as he described it, gleaming marble floors, chrome accents, silence thick with corporate ambition. Charlotte was warming up for spring, but the air inside was conditioned clinical. I hadn't been to Cashin's office in years. He always said it was easier to keep things separate. Work there, life here. I used to believe him. Now I was just tired of eating dinner alone. Maybe bringing him lunch would be a small gesture that reminded him I was still in this marriage. Still choosing it. My heels clicked softly against the tile. I caught my reflection in the glass, my lipstick a little too pink, blouse tucked perfectly, hair curled the way he once said made me look, approachable but sharp. I tried to summon a smile, rehearsing in my mind what I'd say when I saw him. Hey, love. Brought your favorite. You forgot to take anything this morning. The man at the security desk looked up as I approached. His nameplate read Wes. He blinked once, then offered a polite, if distant, nod. I smiled back. I'm here to see Cashin Dre. He's expecting. Wes cut me off gently. Ma'am, the CEO's wife just left. The coffee tray tilted. I caught it in time. I'm sorry. He tilted his head slightly, looking at me like I was either confused or joking. You just missed her. She comes by a lot. Picks up files, drops off things. Tall, brunette. Heels like yours. Real friendly. My throat closed. My grip on the cup tightened until the lid popped off slightly. I could smell the almond milk foam starting to sour. Oh, I said. That was all. I didn't ask anything else. I didn't explain. My heart thundered in my ears, and for a moment, the walls of that shiny lobby closed in. I turned away before Wes could look too closely at my face. Looking back now, I should have walked out of that building. But I didn't. I needed to see it for myself. The elevator ride was silent. My fingers trembled around the call button. On the top floor, everything was exactly as Cashin described. Sleek, professional, impersonal. A receptionist glanced up and gave me a neutral smile. He's in a meeting, she began, but I'd already moved past her. His door was closed, but the glass panel beside it gave me just enough of a view. His office was empty, neat, always too neat. The chair pushed in, computer asleep, and on his desk, a silver picture frame faced outward. I stepped closer. My breath hitched. 2 people in the photo. Cashin, in a tuxedo, beaming. And a woman, young, slim, smiling in a way I remembered doing once. She wore white, a wedding dress. Her hand rested possessively on his chest. It wasn't me. My knees buckled slightly. I reached for the wall. The photo wobbled on its stand, but didn't fall. I was supposed to be the only wife who ever stood at that desk. I didn't knock. I didn't wait. I walked back to the elevator, back down past the lobby, where Wes didn't even glance up this time. The sun was still out when I stepped outside. The sky a soft blue, a breeze tugging at my sleeves. People passed me with coffee cups and clipped conversations, untouched by what had just shifted inside me. My car felt like a coffin. I sat in the driver's seat, clutching the steering wheel as if it might anchor me. The coffee had spilled. It seeped through the bag and onto my wrist. Hot. Sharp. But I didn't move. I barely breathed. My name wasn't anywhere in that office. Not on a desk, not in a frame, not in the eyes of the man at reception. It was as if I'd never existed there at all. He had a new wife. Or, at least a new version of one. One the building recognized. I wasn't late, I whispered. I had already been replaced. I didn't drive home. I drifted. One turn after another. A loop I barely registered. The coffee-stained bag sat in the passenger seat, seeping through the brown paper like a wound that wouldn't clot. I didn't roll down the windows. I didn't turn on the radio. The silence inside that car felt heavier than the steering wheel in my hands. The seatbelt pressed tight against my chest, damp with foam and almond milk. It clung to me like guilt I hadn't earned. Cashin used to say I worried too much, that I needed to relax, take things less personally. I wonder if that's what he told her too. This woman the building recognized as his wife. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call him. That's what surprised me most. Looking back now, I think my body knew before my mind did. Knew that if I broke down, I might never get up again. That's where it all started. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, dropping the bag on the kitchen counter. The smell hit me, sweet, stale, spoiled.
Just like this marriage.
I needed something to do. Anything. So I went to the office. Not the one I once helped design downtown. The one Cashin let me furnish and then slowly banish me from, one delayed meeting at a time. No, this was the drawer in our home, his important papers. Tax returns, warranties, insurance policies. A space he never invited me to touch but never explicitly claimed either. I opened it slowly. My fingers moved through folders with too much familiarity because I'd once built this life with him, document by document. Then I saw it. A manila envelope tucked inside a folder marked Q1 tax backup, labeled in Cashin's handwriting, emergency. It wasn't sealed. Inside was a separation agreement. Drafted. Not filed yet. My name was on the first page, misspelled in a way that felt intentional, like he wanted to create distance even in ink. I flipped through the clauses, my breath tight in my chest. Clause 5 stopped me cold. Due to demonstrated psychological instability, the respondent may pose an emotional safety risk and shall forfeit any claims on shared assets, including but not limited to. I don't know what stung more, the words themselves or how easily they slid off the page, like he'd rehearsed them in his head long before they were typed. He wasn't just erasing me from his desk. He was pre-writing the story of my downfall. That's what I whispered to the empty room. I sat for a while after that, long enough for the sky to shift. Then I walked into his home office. Not my space, not anymore. But the door wasn't locked. His laptop was open, humming softly. I wasn't looking for anything. That's the truth. But it was there, the screen blinking with a calendar notification. Anniversary dinner, Bellecourt, 7 p.m. Bellecourt. The same restaurant where he'd proposed to me 12 years ago. I clicked the event. The description read, 10 years of growth with Veronica. You've made me the man I am. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. My eyes refused to blink. He's rewriting our memories, giving them new faces. I backed away slowly, afraid if I stayed any longer, I'd start believing I'd imagined everything. I closed the lid and returned to the kitchen. I opened my laptop. A blank document. Cursor blinking like a pulse. I started typing.
Dates.
Bank statements. Dinner reservations. Emails. The handwriting in my mind was shaky at first, then steadier. I created folders. Financials. Legal. Communications. Then a final one. Truth. I didn't cry. I didn't text anyone. I didn't scream into the walls or shatter a plate. I wrote. I remembered his voice last week, casual and cruel in retrospect. You've been distracted lately, Al. Maybe take some time for yourself. Now I heard it differently. It wasn't concern.
It was strategy.
He was making room for my absence. Looking back now, I should have known he was clearing the space for someone else to move in. Someone who came bearing less history, fewer questions. I saved the file. I closed the laptop. And for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. The next morning, I woke before the sun. Not because of anxiety. There was no racing heartbeat, no tangled sheets soaked in sweat. Just a strange kind of stillness, like my body had accepted something my mind hadn't fully formed yet. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost. The kettle hissed faintly behind me as I sat at the table, wrapping both hands around a mug I didn't taste.
Cashin was out of town, meetings in Nashville, he said.
Back by Thursday. Don't wait up. I didn't respond. That silence felt like armor now. My phone buzzed on the table, its vibration slicing through the quiet like a violin's string snapping. I glanced down. A message from Aaron Mallory. Saw Cashin at the gala last weekend. You weren't there? I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over it. Then I set the phone down, face down. The coffee was cold before I even noticed. Looking back now, I should have braced myself before making the call. I rang her back anyway. Erin answered with that chipper half-laugh she always used, the one that told me she was trying not to sound guilty. Oh, hey, Elle. I didn't think you'd call back so fast. You texted me, I said. A pause.
Right.
Yeah, it was weird not seeing you there. I closed my eyes. What gala, Erin? Another pause, longer this time. The Children's Health Foundation one at the Hilton. Saturday night.
Cashin and...
Well, I assumed you too. You thought we were separated? I asked, my voice flatter than I intended. I mean, that's what he's been telling people. For a while now, actually. I let the silence hang. Let her fill it. I'm sorry. I didn't know it wasn't true. It just seemed like you were never around. He's always with that woman now. Veronica something? It's public, Elle. There were photographers. Press. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste blood. Thanks, Erin. I hung up before she could say anything else. I opened my laptop, fingers already numb. My breathing shallow but deliberate. Social media did the rest. Event photos. Black ties and sequins. And there he was, Cashin, smiling beside her.
Tall.
Brunette. The same woman the security guard had described. Her hand on his chest. Her dress a little too expensive. Her grin a little too knowing. Captions under each photo. Dre and Hart. Power couple of the year. Visionaries. Innovators. Partners. No mention of me. Not even a lie.
Just
omission. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. That night, I couldn't sleep.
So I didn't try.
Instead, I accessed the old employee portal. I wasn't sure the login would still work, but it did. Same username I helped set up for him 12 years ago. Same password I'd teased him for keeping too simple, our anniversary date. It felt like a code to a house I no longer lived in. The files were clean. Too clean. I searched for my name. One hit. A single line in an archived file. Founding Phase Contributor E. Quinn. That's all I was now. A footnote in my own life. But then I found it. A document labeled Legal Grounds, Founders Reclassification. I opened it.
And read.
Internal memo from Cashin to legal counsel. Subject: Reclassification of former co-founder due to voluntary disengagement, 2020. Rationale: emotional burnout cited in previous HR assessments. Documentation to follow. I blinked at the screen, reading it again. He's not just taking my future. He's editing my past. I printed everything, page after page. Each sheet like a nail into something I used to believe was permanent. I laid them out on the dining room table, legal notices, financial records, calendar invitations, magazine clippings. Like puzzle pieces to a life I hadn't realized was being disassembled in real time. It didn't look like betrayal. It looked like strategy. You let him shape the story too long. The voice in my head said. It wasn't Cashin's voice. It was mine. It's time to take the pen back. I sat down, breathing slowly. One hand flat on the table, the other gripping the pages like a lifeline. That's when I knew I couldn't do this alone. I picked up the phone. The number was still in my contacts. A name I hadn't said aloud in 4 years. My finger hovered for a moment, then tapped. It rang once.
Twice.
Then a click. Melis? I said. Silence. It's Ilaria. I need your help. I know what he's doing. Come alone, Melis said and then hung up. I found her at a small cafe we used to visit when we were younger, before the lines were drawn, before Cashin told me she had boundary issues and couldn't be trusted professionally, before I believed him. She sat near the window, back straight, eyes cautious but not unkind. The rain tapped gently against the glass. It softened the edges of the city around us. I slid into the seat across from her and said nothing. Her fingers drummed once on the paper coffee cup, then stopped. She reached into her bag and handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. I'm not proud of how long I held onto it. I took it without a word. My hand was steady. That surprised me. I didn't know who else to give it to, she added. But it never sat right. The edits. The way he cleared the record. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Looking back now, I think I forgave her the moment she placed that drive in my palm. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed someone to choose me, even if it came late. That's where it all started. That evening, I didn't turn on the lights when I got home. I moved through shadows, every step familiar. I plugged in the flash drive, my thumb hovering just a second longer than it needed to. The video opened automatically. A corporate film, Dre Media's 10-year anniversary. Upbeat music. Polished voiceover. Cashin's voice. Too clear. Too curated. Footage rolled. The early team, the bare-bones office. The painted logo on the wall I designed myself. But I wasn't there. I should have been in the frame standing beside Cashin at that launch event. I remembered exactly what I wore. A navy wrap dress, chipped nail polish, sweat beading down my back because we couldn't afford air conditioning yet. Instead, the video cut to Veronica, laughing beside Cashin in scenes she never lived. A ribbon cutting. A handshake with a client I introduced. My voice, once part of the original narration, replaced with hers. I pressed pause. My hand covered my mouth, but it wasn't to muffle a sob.
It was to steady my breath.
He didn't just cut me out, I whispered. He deep-faked history. I closed the video and opened the second folder. Audio files. One labeled with a date 6 months ago. I clicked. The background was clinking glass and muted jazz. Cashin's voice, unmistakably casual. We'll file the paperwork right after Series B closes. It'll be clean. She was always more background support anyway. A pause. Laughter. Then, Veronica is the brand now. I sat in the dark for a long time after that. Then, quietly, I removed my wedding ring.
It didn't resist.
No stick. No struggle. Just a soft slide, like it, too, had been waiting for this moment. I placed it in a small ceramic bowl. The one I'd made during a pottery class Cashin signed us up for as a reconnection gift. We missed half the sessions because he kept flying out for investor meetings. Looking at it now, the bowl felt like a parody, misshapen, half-glazed. A metaphor that had taken a decade to explain itself. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the mirror lights, stared at my reflection. Not for vanity, for confirmation. The woman who looked back at me didn't look fragile. She looked tired, yes, but there was a clarity in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Not since the early days, when hope still held hands with ambition. It wasn't that he forgot me, I murmured. He rewrote me. Soft deletion. No alert. Just gone. The next morning, I called my attorney. I gave him the name of a forensic accountant. Told him I wanted to know exactly what percentage of the company I still legally owned, down to the decimal. He hesitated. You're sure you want to pursue this? It'll be a fight. I'm not afraid of a fight, I said. You weren't, even back then. That line stayed with me longer than it should have. Because there had been a time when I had fought. For him. For the company. For everything we built. And maybe, in trying to preserve all of it, I'd let myself become disposable. Not anymore. I began compiling documents that night. Screenshots. Receipts. Emails. Calendar entries. I even dug through an old inbox from a shared project folder, finding timestamps that proved I'd been there for nearly every milestone. This time, I wouldn't whisper the truth. This time, I'd build a case no one could deny. The printer in his office purred at exactly 3:14 p.m., as if it had been waiting all day to deliver the next blow. I wasn't there to hear it, of course, but the silence that followed on my end of things was louder than any mechanical hum. Somewhere across the city, a single sheet slid out of the tray. Cashin's name printed at the top. My name, somewhere near the bottom, misspelled as usual. It was the final stage of a psychological profile. He was building a case, one quiet click at a time. That's where it all started. I sat across from a man named Gregory Linton the following morning. He wore corduroy and spoke in full sentences that never dipped below professional tone, but I could tell he'd seen this before. His office was plain safe. Neutral beige walls. Quiet hum of the AC. No distractions. Just paperwork and people trying not to fall apart. I've seen a lot of these, he said, flipping through the folder I'd handed him. But this one's layered. I nodded, my hands folded neatly in my lap. I need to know how deep it goes. He adjusted his glasses. It's not good, Mrs. Dre. Your husband's used marital assets to purchase property under a shell LLC. Veronica Hart's name is tied to it through secondary filings. He's covering his tracks, but not very well. I didn't flinch. What about the money trail? Joint account, he said. Withdrawn in weekly transfers. Just small enough not to trigger flags, but over time, it adds up. I reached for the pen beside me. My hand trembled for half a second before studying. I wrote one word in my notebook. Leverage. He funded her future with the pieces of mine. Gregory exhaled slowly. You still have a case, but you'll need to act soon. Once that Series B investment hits, everything gets harder. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. I didn't realize it then, but that meeting marked the first time in years I walked into a room and felt like I still had weight. That night, I sat in Cashin's home office again, alone. The air still smelled faintly of his cologne, an expensive kind that tried too hard. I logged into the local backup system, not expecting much. But old habits die hard. Cashin always kept secondary redundancies, just in case, he used to say. The camera feed opened instantly. I clicked through each angle until one stopped me cold. It was our bedroom. Not surveillance. Not security. A stationary frame, positioned too perfectly. The timestamp placed it weeks ago. I was in the footage, walking back and forth, talking to myself, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly.
Crying.
He had recorded it,
Clipped it. Cropped it.
no sound, just silent proof of what? That I grieved? That I cracked? My hand covered my mouth. He's weaponizing my grief. I backed up the files. All of it. Every frame. Every minute. At 7:02 a.m. the next morning, I sent the email. To Cashin. Subject line, recommendation. I suggest you stop immediately. I have what I need. If you push further, I will make it public. I didn't add anything else. No sign-off.
No pleasantries. No threats.
Just truth, packaged plainly. There was no reply. No read receipt. I didn't expect one. By noon, the sun pierced through the kitchen window so sharply it made my eyes ache. I sat in silence, sipping coffee that had gone cold again. That's when my phone vibrated. Not a call. A system ping. Printer notification from the network backup I'd left logged in. New document scanned, 3:14 p.m. I opened it, and there it was. The final profile. 3 pages. Bullet points. Emotionally volatile. Detached from reality. Resistance to change. Persistent delusions of partnership. I printed it myself this time. Stapled it. Filed it under the tab labeled Insurance. Then I got in my car and drove. Back to Gregory. Back to the lawyer. Back to the place where Cashin had assumed I'd never return. This time, I wasn't asking for help. I was stating my case. I didn't park close to the entrance. I didn't need the spotlight, just access. The downtown hotel buzzed with quiet vanity. Bellboys rolled silver carts. Laughter drifted from the elevator bank. I stepped inside, smoothing the front of my navy dress, ignoring the weight of my heels. The dress was simple, clean, and intentionally unremarkable, just enough presence to be seen, not enough to be remembered. I entered the ballroom through the side corridor, weaving through service staff and floral arrangements. I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't a guest anymore. Cashin's company was hosting a networking mixer, celebrating innovation and integrity. I tasted the irony like spoiled fruit. That's where it all started. The lighting inside was warm, golden, deliberately flattering. Spotlights illuminated branding banners and donor logos. Waiters carried trays of shrimp skewers and sparkling wine. People milled about in clusters, laughing a little too loudly. I moved quietly, observing,
Listening.
Isn't that Veronica's husband? I turned toward the voice. 2 women mid-40s, decked in pearls and stiff smiles, whispered near the bar. They're such a perfect match. Honestly, I thought he was still married, but someone said his wife, what was her name again? L something. Elena, the other guest. Who knows? He upgraded. I didn't blink. I just kept walking. I'd expected worse. Then a young intern brushed past me, holding a tray of wine. Oh, ma'am, are you with catering? I looked her in the eye, calm as glass.
No.
She turned red, mumbled an apology, and walked away. My hands stayed at my sides. My jaw unclenched. My eyes didn't leave the floor. I was a ghost in the house I helped build. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. Back home, I pulled the mail from the box with the same detached motion I used for everything lately. Bills, flyers, one magazine with Cashin's smirking face on the cover. Business Monthly. The headline, Building the Empire of Trust, the Drehart Legacy. I took it inside, sat at the kitchen table, and flipped through. Photos of Cashin and Veronica holding hands, posing with sponsors, giving speeches. One quote stood out, bold and centered. We built this together from scratch. Just the two of us. There it was. The rewrite in black and white. I folded the page carefully, not tearing it.
Precision mattered now.
I placed it in a folder marked lies. Then I picked up my phone. Gregory, I said when he answered. I'm ready.
File. Freeze. Trace.
All of it. He didn't respond immediately. You sure about this, Ilaria? I'm sure. There'll be fallout. PR, gossip. Family, even. I stared out the window. If I survived being erased, I said, I can survive being seen. He exhaled. All right. I'll coordinate with the litigation team. The next morning, I stood outside the law office as the sun rose over the city. I wore the same navy dress, same flats, no makeup, no armor, just facts. Inside, the legal assistant typed the filing, every keystroke like a match strike. We reviewed everything.
Timeline.
Evidence folders, financial analysis, communications log. She clicked submit. A soft chime rang out, a quiet confirmation that the process had begun. I didn't smile. I didn't exhale. I just stood there, steady. Somewhere, on another device, in another space Cashin occupied with his endless control, a ping echoed. In his inbox, notice of petition. Ilaria Quinn versus Cashin. I stood in the hallway just outside Gregory's office, hand on the door, breath slow and shallow. It wasn't fear that kept me still, it was clarity. A quiet sort that arrives after the storm's passed but before the wreckage is tallied. Inside, a brown envelope waited on the table, already stamped confidential. My name was scrawled in small, neat letters, E. Quinn. I opened the door. Gregory looked up from his laptop, gave a short nod. You're ready? Yes, I said. It's time. That's where it all started. He slid the envelope across the table, then opened a folder beside him. We pulled all internal documentation from Dre Media. Legal discovery requests hit their inbox last night. Here's what we found. I flipped through the pages. Internal emails. Corporate memos, HR directives. It was all there. The line that stopped me. Effective immediately, no materials should include or reference Ilaria Quinn. Remove archived media as appropriate. My throat tightened. My hands didn't. He deleted me like I was never real. Gregory watched me for a beat, then simply said, The board has questions now. They've called an emergency session. I'll be there, I said. My voice surprised even me. Solid, unwavering. 3 hours later, I stepped onto the 27th floor of the tower I once helped Cashin secure financing for. The boardrooms smelled like lemon oil and polished reputation. Cashin was already seated at the head of the table, his smile brittle as I walked in. The others turned to look, some surprised, some already warned. I didn't wait for an invitation. I placed a laptop, a hard drive, and a manila folder labeled Blueprint on the table. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Ilaria, to what do we owe the clarity? I cut in. You owe me nothing. But the truth? That's due. The room quieted. I plugged in the drive and opened the first file. Audio. Cashin's voice, from the dinner 6 months ago. We'll file the paperwork right after Series B closes. It'll be clean. She was always more background support anyway. Eyes darted around the table. Cashin shifted. Next slide, timestamps and bank withdrawals, small weekly transfers leading to a property purchase. Registered under an LLC linked to Veronica Hart. Then the video. The 10-year corporate reel, shown side by side with the original footage, one featuring me, the other scrubbed clean, her face inserted where mine had been. Someone murmured, Jesus. I turned to Cashin. This company was built on lies, I said. And I brought the original blueprints. He laughed, short and bitter. This is business. She's bitter. That's all this is. Maylis stood from the back corner.
I didn't know she'd arrived.
No, Cashin. It's theft. And it's documented. She clicked the remote again. Bank transactions highlighted, recipient names, IP logs. The boardroom buzzed with whispers. A lawyer leaned toward one of the directors. Another scribbled something onto a notepad. Cashin stood now, face red, voice raised. You all knew we had issues. She's been unstable for years. She left the company. You said it yourselves, she wasn't involved. I stepped forward. You wrote that narrative. You printed it, edited it, rehearsed it. But this, I held up the file labeled Legal Withdrawal Patterns. This is mine. This story ends here. There was silence. Then one shareholder, a woman I didn't recognize, spoke evenly. Mr. Dre, we're voting tonight. She didn't smile.
She didn't blink.
And I suggest you bring a box. Cashin didn't look at me as I gathered my things from the conference table. His shoulders remained square, posture rigid, chin raised like a statue refusing to crumble, even as the boardroom air still echoed with the sting of his exposure. His fall had been quiet in that room. No shouting, no dramatic exits, just silence and shifting gazes, the kind that slice deeper than words. He kept his hands folded in front of him like he still belonged there. But he didn't. Not anymore. I didn't give him the dignity of a goodbye. Not even a glance. Just the sound of a zipper sliding closed, the soft rustle of my files, and the deliberate rhythm of my heels on the tile as I walked out. Behind me, the conference door swung slowly shut. A click, final and absolute. A door I would never open again. That night, there was no wine, no dinner, no scrolling through headlines to see who had picked up the story, no messages to Maylis. I just drove. No music, just the quiet hum of tires and the wind curling through the cracked window. The city's neon pulse blurred against the windshield, pink, gold, indigo. It all felt distant, unreal, like I was gliding through a life I used to recognize. The streets didn't care who I was. They didn't care what I'd lost or reclaimed. For once, I was grateful to be invisible. And maybe, in some twisted way, that was where this next chapter began. Not with a headline or a confrontation, but with absence. With silence. The following morning, the kettle had just begun to whistle when my phone started buzzing. One notification. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession. My screen lit up like a storm. Mentions. DMs. News alerts. My breath caught. Maylis had sent the clip. A single sentence in her message. You'll want to see this. I tapped the video. It was filmed from across the marble lobby of Dre Media, Cashin, flanked by 2 security officers, walking with robotic stiffness. His once perfect suit wrinkled and sagging. His tie askew. That signature smile, the one he practiced in mirrors, gone. Cameras flashed like gunfire around him. The elevator doors opened. He didn't turn around. Across the bottom of the video, a headline rolled like a punchline. From visionary to vanished. I didn't watch it twice. Once was enough to feel the weight of every lie he'd wrapped in charm. To know that the facade had finally collapsed under its own arrogance. Part of me, the part still healing from the smears and betrayals, had hoped he'd go quietly, with a shred of dignity. But grace requires humility, and Cashin never possessed that currency. By mid-afternoon, I had assembled a package. A manila envelope, padded, precise. Inside, every falsified asset record, every timeline discrepancy, printed transcripts of wire transfers he thought were buried, snapshots from events Veronica claimed to have never attended, and, most damning of all, a copy of his recorded admission. His voice, smooth and smug, laying bare the truth in his own words. On top of it all, I placed a single note in clean, minimal black ink. For your records, so you know who you raised. The address was easy. Veronica's parents still lived in the same Tudor-style home with the stone walkway and the security gate with her initials on it. I mailed it without hesitation. No return label. 2 days later, the fallout began. Brand sponsorships dropped her like spoiled fruit. Press releases vanished from her website. Her Instagram, once a polished curation of espresso shots and faux humility, went offline. Her podcast, which she'd once called her voice for the unheard, ended mid-season. No explanation. Just gone. Like she had never existed in the public eye. Her parents didn't respond. But I didn't expect a thank you card. I didn't want closure from them. I didn't gloat. I didn't toast to karma or retribution. I just pulled a pen from my drawer and with quiet satisfaction, crossed one more name off the list. But the story wasn't finished. That night, as twilight bled into the window panes and I stood barefoot in my kitchen, the email came in. From Maylise. Subject line, check this out. You'll want headphones. The link led to a podcast. True Betrayal, a long-form investigative series hosted by a voice I hadn't heard in years, but recognized from a past life. One I'd listened to while commuting, when I still believed in professionalism over revenge. The episode was titled, When History Gets Rewritten, The Case of EQ versus Stray Media. I sat at the counter, chipped mug in hand, fingers curled tight around ceramic as the voice poured through my earbuds. It began slowly, methodically. Layer by layer, they unfolded the timeline, doctored partnerships, financial sleight of hand, strategic erasures of credit, image manipulation. The kind of cover-up that takes months to construct and minutes to burn. And then the audio clips. Cashin's voice. Veronica's laugh. The host didn't use my name until the final minute. Some women disappear quietly, she said, forced into shadows by the machinery of power. But others document the truth until the world has no choice but to hear them scream. I paused it there, just before the music swelled. I didn't cry, but something shifted. A weight I hadn't realized I was carrying uncoiled. It wasn't relief. It wasn't victory. It was something heavier, quieter, like grief finally given a name. My phone buzzed again. Gregory. His message was simple. Final step is yours. You want the house back. I stood there, eyes fixed on the yard outside. The same one I had landscaped myself in the early days, pulling weeds while Cashin rehearsed keynote speeches inside. I could almost hear him, promising me a fire pit, a swing set, dinners under string lights. I typed back without pause. No. I want to buy it. In cash. And give it away. He didn't question it. Because he understood. That house was never mine. It was a stage. A prop. A well-decorated illusion. I had poured myself into its corners. I had cried into its sheets. I had swallowed my pride on its kitchen floor. But it had never held space for me. Not truly. Now it would become something else. Not a museum of betrayal. Not a reminder of what was taken. But a sanctuary for someone still climbing out of the dark. For someone still learning how to be seen. No more curtains. No more performances. Just light and honesty and doors that would never lock behind them. I stood at the threshold, keys in hand, staring at the front door like it might recognize me. The paint had been touched up, the brass handle replaced. It looked almost new, like the memories inside had been wiped clean too. But I knew better. A house never forgets. The title transfer was complete. Gregory had handed me the papers 2 days ago with a quiet nod and a whispered, "Well done." I didn't tell him what I planned to do with it. Some things didn't need explanation. I stepped inside. The air was still. No scent of cologne, no hum of white noise machines Cashin once insisted were essential for mental clarity. The walls were bare now, and every sound I made echoed back at me. I moved slowly through the rooms, barefoot, letting the floor remember me. Every creak felt like a memory exhaled, soft, resigned. That's where it all started. In the living room, I placed the manila folder on the mantel.
Neat.
Undramatic. To Hope House Women's Shelter. Inside, the deed, keys, and a donation check with my name spelled exactly right. When the staff member arrived, she looked at me with a mix of confusion and gratitude. "You don't want to keep it?" I shook my head. It never belonged to me. But maybe now it can belong to someone who needs it more than I ever did. She didn't press. She just nodded and held the keys like they carried weight. Maybe they did. I didn't look back as I left. At my apartment, everything was smaller, but it was mine. The cushions didn't match, the silverware was thrifted, and the garden out back was more weeds than anything, but it breathed with me. That evening, I opened the ceramic bowl on the kitchen shelf. The one I placed my wedding ring in months ago. It was still there, unmoved, untouched. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I tore a slip of paper from my notebook and wrote one word. Enough. I folded it and placed it inside the bowl. Closed the lid. That was the last ritual I needed. The next morning, I sat in the garden with my coffee. The air was warm, fragrant with early roses. A breeze tugged at the hem of my robe. "You don't win by burning everything," I whispered aloud. "You win by walking away from the fire and not looking back." I thought about all the women still standing in rooms where their names had been erased. Still whispering truths no one heard. Still waiting for someone to hand them the pen. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Maylise. "You did it." I stared at the words for a long time before replying.
No.
I just stopped being afraid to. I didn't send anything else. I didn't need to. Inside, sunlight spilled across the table, illuminating a new blueprint I'd unrolled that morning. Not for a company. Not for a home. For something else entirely. A community center. A space for women like me, like the version of me who had once doubted whether her pain was worth believing. It wasn't revenge. It was a return. Before we end this story, here's something to hold on to. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's not chaos. It's choosing peace, while they drown in the silence you leave behind. Have you ever felt like you were quietly replaced? Share your story in the comments, and if you found strength in Alaria's journey, don't forget to subscribe. More true life stories are coming soon.